Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. We've got a great Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today in the series that we're calling the Real Dirt Podcasts. It's a podcast where we are getting deep into one particular topic and trying to almost exhaust that topic until, if it's something you want to learn, hopefully we've covered about everything that you would want to know about it. Today, we are covering slumps, and particularly slump busters, and how to address slumps, what to do when someone's in one, how to get out of one. And we've got Bryan Torresani on the call today, who's the head coach at Arcadia University, very successful Division III program in Pennsylvania. Coach Torresani's got quite a few videos on the website. He's done podcasts with us before, so we're pumped to have him back. I'll give you a little background on Coach Torresani before we jump into the podcast with him so you can get a better idea just of his background and where he comes from, things that he's done. He played at Elizabethtown College in Pennsylvania finished there after starting at Penn State Abington. He began his coaching career as a high school coach for 1 year. Then he became an assistant coach at Chestnut Hill College, a brand new Division II program at that time in Philadelphia. He was then an assistant coach at Division I Salle. Then became the head coach at Immaculata University, a Division III school in Pennsylvania, and now since 2017 has been the head coach at Arcadia. So, Coach Torresani, appreciate you spending some time with us on the podcast today, and I'm pretty pumped to get into this with you.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully I can help some people out today.
I'm just kind of curious why this was a subject that you wanted to get into. I know we've talked about it before, but why was this something that you wanted to come on the podcast to discuss?
Yeah, I think, for me, this was an area as a player that, I really struggled with. I think a lot of times when you're talking about slumps and it relates to, a lot of things between the ears and the mental game, and that's something that if I could go back 15, 20 years when I was playing and make an improvement on, that would probably be the one thing. So that being said, now as a coach, it's something that, I really try to keep a close tabs on and work with guys. It's something I enjoy working with guys on now, and helping them try to get out of funks and stay in a good place to be able to perform their best day in and day out.
I think a lot of times what coaches were not good at as players, they're really things that they focus on once they become coaches so they can help other guys like themselves. And this is definitely one of those areas. And for me as well, I had certainly my struggles in different areas. And, getting out of a slump is not easy to do, especially most high school hitters. So we'll focus specifically on hitters in this podcast. But most high school hitters have never experienced a slump. And then they go to college, and of course they will at some point, more than likely. But sometimes even guys that when they first get to college, like maybe they hit 400 in high school, and they get to college, and as a freshman in the fall, they might be hitting 250, 275. And to them, that even feels like a slump, even though that's a pretty decent fall once you jump into college competition, and not really a bad spring for a lot of freshmen. But it can feel like a slump because you're getting so many fewer hits than you're used to. So how do you define a slump? Or if a guy comes to you and says, like, Coach, I really feel like I'm struggling, like, do you ever come back and say, like, hey, man, I think you're doing this, this, and this. Like, to me, you're hitting pretty well. How do you actually define when a guy is in a slump?
Yeah, I think, for me, and especially for the nature of our conversation today, like when I thought about this, it was like, okay, to me, this is like a player that's playing every day, and again, that could be fall in your squad, but somebody that's gone on about 20 at bats, 5 or so games, and just doesn't look like themselves. Like is not taking good swings, is not making quality contact that you're used to seeing them make, and just really looks kind of lost at the plate, over that 20-game stretch. That's really the way that I look, at, or I'm going to look at it today anyway, in terms of what I would call a slump. I think what you described a lot of times can be cured with that conversation of like, hey, you might feel like you're underperforming, but as the coach, this is what I'm seeing. You are putting up good at-bats. You're hitting the ball hard consistently. Yeah, you may only be hitting 250 or 275, but you don't look completely lost at the plate. And this isn't something that's been going on for, a 5-game stretch or a 20 at-bat stretch. So for today's conversation, I think if people can kind of think of it in that framework of a player that really just looks sort of lost over those 20 at bats. I think that's kind of the slump that I'm going after today.
When we discuss slumps, how often do you think players talk themselves into slumps or think themselves into slumps? Meaning, just say a guy just had a pretty standard 0 for 4, hit a couple balls hard, but just didn't have anything to show for it. Next day, maybe an 0 for 3, again with one ball hit hard. Maybe maybe you got a bad call somewhere, like on a strike 3 that you didn't agree with, and maybe a pop-up or whatever. The next game, something similar happens. 1 or 2 balls hit hard. A couple things just didn't go your way. And all of a sudden, you have 3 games in a row, 4 games in a row where you don't have any hits, but you haven't necessarily been swinging the bat poorly or anything else. It's just you haven't gotten the results. And we are in a game. We play a game and coach a game that is so results oriented, or at least it wants to be. When you look at box scores and things of that nature, that's what's shoved in your face is these statistics and they're results based. And as a hitter, I think it's natural. Whether it's right or wrong, it's natural to feel like, okay, look at, evaluating your own performance when you don't get hits, especially for a couple of days in a row, even if you have been swinging the bat pretty well, it's hard to not feel like you're in a slump. So how often do you think slumps, or what a player would consider a slump, is sort of just created in his mind, as opposed to what you said, where he's actually like not putting good swings on the ball and not hitting the ball very hard for several days in a row?
Yeah, listen, the players certainly are not robots, and so it's as much as you would want them to kind of realize that, hey, maybe they're not, performing as poorly at the plate as they might think in the scenario you just described. A lot of guys are going to really feel that pressure and probably start to press, like when they don't get a hit for it. Could be 1 game or 2 games or 3 games, like you said. I know for us in our program, we keep a quality at bat statistic that does take some of the sort of arbitrary batting average type things out of the equation. What I mean by that is, like, if a guy stings the ball right at the shortstop and he hits it hard, like for us, that's a 1-for-1 quality at bat. And that's the nature of hitting. You can do everything right and still have, quote unquote, nothing to show for it. Or you can get jammed and kind of shoot one over the second baseman's head that falls in for a hit, not a very good swing, and on the batting average side, you get a 1-for-1. But, from overall, you can't do that over the course of the season consistently and expect to have the results that you want. So we try to just have guys look at those quality at bat, metrics that we keep from game to game, and our goal for that is 60%. And so we feel like if guys can do that, they're succeeding more than they're failing, and hopefully won't have that that feeling that they're not playing well, even if maybe their batting average isn't exactly what they want it to be. They're still consistently doing things at the plate to help their team win games, which at the end of the day, I think is the goal.
I agree, and let's maybe we'll come back to that. Just helping the team as one way to sort of convince yourself that you're not in a slump. Are you still doing things to help the team? Let's come back to that. For right now, what are things that you've seen that can cause a slump? Meaning, like, when there's a slump, is it typically approach? Is it typically something going wrong with mechanics, or is it something else? What typically causes a slump in a hitter that is an actual slump, again, where there's just the quality of the at-bats, the quality of the contact is just not there compared to what you were used to seeing as a coach, what the player's used to seeing as, within it for himself?
Yeah, I think with, I really broke it down three causes of what can cause a guy to really go, south for a long period of time. And these are not necessarily in a particular order, although I do think mechanics normally is at the bottom of that list of 3. So mechanics is on there, but the other 2, which I think are interchangeable a little bit, is approach and timing. And when I say approach, at its simplest form, I mean which pitches are they swinging at and which pitches are they not swinging at. And then, timing, a lot of times is just being on time. For the fastball, I think the number one sort of issue there is, the right-handed hitter that's consistently fouling balls off over the first base dugout. Like that's one of our biggest pet peeves in our program is because we work on it ad nauseum, is being on time, for fastball. So those are the 3 things that I look at when and try to diagnose if a guy's really not going well, and try to pinpoint one of those 3 try to work on first to hopefully get him out of that funk.
Okay, so between approach, timing, and mechanics is probably the one you said is at the bottom of that list. So let's talk about approach first. Can you tell me some things that typically kind of get awry with the approach when guys typically fall into slumps? Like some general things that are common to see, and then what do you do as a coach to help a player out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is going to sound really stupid simple probably, but a lot of times when guys are not going well, they are swinging at pitches that they shouldn't swing at, and they are taking pitches that they should swing at. And I think one thing I learned a lot this year from our new hitting coach, Coach Lindsay, was really taking a look at that second part. Like, what pitches are guys taking that they need to be able to, get a good swing off on early in the count that they can hit hard. I think that's one thing I noticed a lot with guys that are struggling is they're taking that sort of borderline-ish fastball that might be not quite in their happy zone, but still in a zone where they can hit the ball hard and do something productive. And before you know it, that's strike one. And then, they're one more strike away from now just having to fight and survive in a two-strike mode. So that's sort of the first part of, of the approach part. And, when guys start to press, that's when they start to leave the zone a little bit, especially early in the count. And you start to see that sort of early first pitch breaking ball swing, the breaking ball that's in the dirt, and they swing over it, or they're anxious and they're really far out in front of a changeup, and instead of just going into the box with that plan and we think the simplest plan is take away the fastball away. That's what most pitchers want to throw most consistently. If we can be ready for that pitch, that's going to be the simplest approach for us to be able to get better. So, that's kind of what we're diagnosing. I know that's a lot, but the way that we do it, obviously we're a small budget Division III program, so we don't have the super high tech camera setups that they have in the big leagues or at some of the higher end Division I schools. But so we try to do it the best we can. One of the ways we do it is we videotape all of our fall inter squad games from behind second base, and what we do is I just simply use my iPhone, and we have a sort of flexible tripod that I can hook up to one of our ball carts, and I put it out behind second base. I either have another pitcher stand there and record the film, or some days I stand out there and record the film because I like that vantage point. And it's a really good view of the pitcher, the catcher, and the hitter. And when we're talking about hitting and slumps and pitch selection and approach, having those at-bats on film can be really important. And I think that's something that anybody can do. Whether it's a high school, we all have iPhones generally or smartphones to be able to video from. I think the tripod probably cost me $7 on Amazon, and if you don't have a ball cart, you can figure out something else to hook it onto. But having those 30, 40 at-bats for guys in the fall has been really important. And then we do the same thing indoors in the winter as well. Same exact idea, ball cart, tripod, videotape every at-bat, so that we have some, again, that's just another form of data, some data to go back to and look at, when it comes to approach. And, even more specific than that, there's one team that we play every year early in the season, and it's a really tough place to play, but the one reason I continue to schedule them is because they have a really good online webcast with a center field camera, and so I'm going to get 4 or 5 at-bats of our starters online in a real game that I can at least look at in a small sample size and watch some things about what's going on there too. So dream scenario would be for us to get a center field camera set up here at some point at our home field, but until that happens, we got to try to be creative. If you don't have that, I think taking video from the open side of the hitter, or right-handed hitter would be the first base side, and left-handed hitter would be obviously the third base side. That can still give you some information too to help you out, especially pitches that are up in the zone or down in the zone. You'll be able to see some of that stuff in terms of what pitches guys are swinging at versus what pitches they're not. Even stuff on the horizontal part of the strike zone, you can tell if a guy loses posture and doesn't get a good swing off, even by being on the side with video. So I think video can be a really good tool to analyze that. If a guy really does have an approach problem, we're going to dig in the cage with that player and do a few drills that really force them to make decisions when they're hitting. And so one of the simplest ones we do is a tee drill. We use 2 tees, and we put a ball one ball on the inside part of the plate, one ball on the outside part of the plate, and basically there's a coach or a teammate, and as the player makes his forward move to the ball, we're just calling in or out as that player is sort of getting ready to hit, and whatever ball we call is the ball that we want that player to hit. And there'll be even times with that drill where we'll say to them, we only want you to hit the outside ball. So if we say inside, you got to stop your swing and take it, or vice versa. We only want you to go after the inside pitch. So if we say out, we want you to stop your swing and take it. So again, it's just forcing them to make a decision rather than just going into the cage and just beating balls off a front toss, off a soft toss, whatever the case may be. Some other things we do is we do in these situations when it comes to approach is we do a lot of mixed batting practice, and we do that in a couple different ways. We do a lot of rounds of 4. Some days, if I had this player, I'd probably start easy and say, okay, we're going to go rounds of 4. I'm going to throw you 2 breaking balls and then 2 fastballs, and we're going to be in the cage with a less than 2 strike focus. We want you to hit any fastball strike, hit it hard, hit it where it's pitched. We want you to hit if the 2 breaking balls, if any of them are elevated that you can hit hard, we want you to hit it. If it's down, we want you to take it. And so they know 2 breaking balls are coming, then 2 fastballs are coming. Once we get to a point where we feel we're comfortable to move forward from there, we'll do a similar round, and we'll tell them you're getting a round of 4, and we'll tell them you're getting 2 breaking balls and 2 fastballs, but we're not telling you what order they're coming in. And so now you have to, they got to kind of focus even a little bit more. Sort of same rules apply. Fastball in the zone, we want you to hit it hard somewhere. Elevated breaking ball, same thing. Breaking ball that's down, we want you to take it. The last part of that would be basically a round of 4 with a straight mix, not really telling them anything that's coming, and just same rules apply when it comes to approach and swing decisions and things like that. I think you can do variations of that with front toss. Like if you don't have a BP pitcher that can throw consistent breaking balls or things like that, you can do that with hard front toss, soft front toss. If you want to kind of simulate a breaking ball or an off-speed pitch as well as a fastball, you can almost do the same exact thing by doing it that way. So those are some of the cage drills that we'll kind of do when it comes to an approach standpoint. And then, in game, I think with that guy, again, we try to keep it simple. This is really our game plan across the board. It's not even just our slump busting game plan, but if we don't know anything about a pitcher, we're going to go in and say, let's get on the fastball away. If we're on time for the fastball away, we feel like we can hit the elevated breaking ball hard somewhere. Again, that's what most pitchers want to do, and so we really tell guys just be ready for that pitch and be willing to hit it where it's pitched, and we think that's going to lead to a lot of success. So that's a somewhat quick breakdown, I think, of sort of how we handle the guy that's really struggling with approach and in that funk.
Okay. So I was going to ask what a good approach is, but you pretty much answered it there at the end. So is that kind of a standard approach for all of your guys? You said if you don't know much about the pitcher, but just kind of like, okay, what is a good approach? Can you define that? Is that how what you just said about being ready for the fastball away, which allows you to adjust to some other pitches? Is that kind of, for you, a standard, quote unquote, good approach? In other words, I'm asking just, okay, if a guy's got a bad approach, so the bad approach is probably swinging at pitches you shouldn't, taking pitches you should swing at. So what is a good approach? How would you actually define that, or did you just define it?
No, it's very similar, I think, to what I just said. I think a good approach for us is, swinging at the first fastball strike that we get. And again, we want to take away that outer half. And we're on guys, if they take a fastball away, like that, they're going to hear about that. If they take a fastball that's inside corner and on the black and it's a good pitch, like that, there's not a whole lot we can do there a lot of times. But I think a good approach, again, is not letting that first fastball that's somewhere over the plate to the outside corner get past you. You got to try to do something with that pitch. And I think a poor approach is swinging at balls before you have, anytime, but especially before you have 2 strikes. If a guy's in there swinging at a breaking ball in the dirt, and it's an 0-0 count, that's just telling us he really doesn't have much of a plan going into that at bat.
I had a hitting coach that I worked alongside with once. When guys were in slumps, he would encourage them to get more aggressive. to go up there and get your hacks in, go ahead and, try to take 3 swings in the at bat. Like if you don't put a ball in play, but what he was trying to discourage was guys going up there and taking and getting into bad counts, which we all know it's a lot tougher to hit when you get in disadvantaged counts for a hitter. But I also think that part of that, whether he ever said it or not, part of that is when as a hitter, your mentality in the box is huge, and sometimes, like you said, when you get in a slump, a lot of times you're taking pitches that you should swing at. And I think sometimes when you take that one fastball that you should have swung at, you can almost be mentally beaten for the rest of the at-bat because you're thinking to yourself, like, obviously when you're in a slump, you don't feel like you're ever getting a pitch to hit, right? You feel like everybody's painting the black on you. Then you get that one pitch to hit, and it's like, gosh, that was my pitch. I just let it go. Like, not, and almost like you almost have a hard time recovering from that for the rest of the at-bat. So I think that was probably part of it as well. Do you encourage your hitters to get more or less aggressive when they are in a slump, or is that not really a term or a way that you talk to guys when they're trying to get out of something?
No, I mean, I think that's our blanket approach, like across the board. We want the ball in play. We want guys to, and it doesn't necessarily mean weekly, and we don't just want to put any pitch we can get our bat on in play, but at the end of the day, if a pitcher's around the zone and he's throwing strikes, we want guys to be aggressive. We think good things can happen in a hurry if we put the ball in play and put pressure on the other team's defense. So when it comes to a guy that's in a slump, like you just said, we kind of find the same thing is sort of that passive instinct kind of takes over, where it's like, I really want to get out of this slump, and here comes, that sort of that fastball that's outer third, but like I'm kind of thinking like I really need to get the perfect pitch here, and the perfect pitch never comes, and you look back on that at bat like, man, I probably could have done something pretty good with that first fastball that was on the outer third. We want guys on that pitch, all the time. So that is definitely something we'll tell guys if they aren't swinging it well. It's like, why don't you go up there and look first pitch and be aggressive?
You maybe sort of answered this one again as well, but I'd like to just ask directly: when you're taking pitches, is there anything in particular that you tell guys to help them to not take a pitch, other than just, is there anything in addition to, hey, just go up there and be aggressive, look for a first pitch you can hit? Is there anything like anything you have the guy sort of like say to himself in the box to make him or to help him to keep that aggressive mentality and not sort of just freeze up or get handcuffed and take a pitch he doesn't want to?
Yeah, it's just something we work on, starting in bullpens in the wintertime and when we're just kind of in the box, not necessarily swinging against our pitchers, but just tracking pitches. And we kind of call it the yes, yes, no approach. It's not something we've made up, but, and I'm sure guys have heard this at other places, but really that approach of like, we want to have that mindset of being ready to swing at every pitch until our eyes tell us to not swing at it and to stop, meaning it's a ball. So if our guys are doing it the right way and buying into sort of the approach we teach, their takes should be pretty aggressive. Like their backside should be firing, their hand should almost be starting, and to the point where they kind of track that ball out of the zone and then they kind of stop that swing. So we just want that mentality of like, I'm swinging at every pitch until my eyes tell me not to.
Great that you bring that up, because I think that's so important, and it's not something that who knows who made that up, but it really works, and I can tell you from personal experience. So that was something I said as a hitter as well, or as a hitting coach, have a yes, yes, yes mentality, and if you're going to say no, it's got to be yes, yes, no, as opposed to no right out of the hand, and then you give up on something too early. And I can tell you that it works, because when I left college coaching, I kind of didn't know what to do with myself in the summer, so when I started my current job, I played in the summer. I was 30 years old or 31 or whatever, and hadn't played since college. But I decided to play in an adult league where I live now, and I found myself occasionally taking pitches I didn't want to take. So I started saying that to myself, and it was just amazing to me, like how it immediately works and immediately makes you more aggressive. And like very, very rarely do you end up taking a pitch, in my opinion, when you have that, when you're in the box, like legitimately saying to yourself, like, yes, 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 like you're ready to swing at everything. And rarely do you take a pitch that after the pitch is over, you're like, boy, I wish I'd swung at that. It almost never happens. So that's one of those things. Sometimes as a coach, like you think things should work, but when you're actually playing and like you try it, you just have a little bit different perspective. And anyway, I've been on the other side of that one and can tell you that it certainly does work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a coach that sort of preaches that philosophy, I think once in a while you have to be willing to understand that a guy might swing at a pitch that they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, the guys that do that well, it's amazing how you see their walks go up and their hard hit balls go up, and it just kind of really helps their overall game.
So out of approach, let's get into the second thing you mentioned, which is timing. Those foul balls over your opposite side dugout are one of the things that can give you sort of the clue as a coach that you've got some timing issues. Is there any other ways that you sort of identify timing issues that your players are having to say, like, okay, this is being caused, this little funk you're in is being caused by your timing?
I mean, I think that's really obviously swings and misses and just kind of looking late on fastballs would be another one. I do have, here kind of down when I did sort of my pre-call thinking about this too, is sort of that guy that's on the other side of that spectrum too, the guy that's just out in front consistently. And, I coach third base for, so like that right-handed hitter that is just consistently pulling balls foul, past you down the third baseline. And typically those guys are the ones that get out on their front side too early and are really just guessing and kind of cheating. And we don't mind that to an extent, but I think still at the end of the day, you got to be able to hit the ball fair and keep it fair. So there's some things we kind of do for both of those scenarios. So I think it's really just the eye test a lot of times. Like you can almost tell you can tell by just watching guys hit and who's on time and who's not. So that's really what we're looking at, those foul balls. I think those foul balls over kind of both sides.
Yeah, and those rollover ground balls tell you a lot. When a guy's rolling over, obviously he's a little bit off on his timing. So what do you do when you see guys' timing is off? Like pound it in the cages, really get in there and get some extra work in, get a machine out? Like what's your approach when a guy has got some timing issues?
Yeah, I think, number one, and this is kind of standard in our program, but, as somebody that might be listening to this call, think about what you're doing as a hitter, when you're not the guy in the box, whether that's in the cage, whether that's, VP on the field or whether that's during games. But all of those pitches that are coming in are free opportunities and free reps to work on your timing. And so, if you would come to watch us practice and us go through a hitting group, we'd have a guy in each cage if we're doing cage work, and we'd also have two guys. The next two guys that are on deck in each group are, whether it's off the machine, whether it's off the coach throwing BP, whatever it is, they're working on their timing on every single pitch, even when they're not that guy, in the box. And so, if you're a hitter that maybe has one of those problems, you're just consistently late, you're fouling balls off over that opposite hand dugout. I would urge you to think about what you're doing before you even step in the box and get ready to hit. So I think that's one of the easiest fixes that guys can make to work on their timing, is just taking those extra reps when they're not the hitter.
That's huge and so overlooked at so many levels. There's a picture that circles around social media pretty regularly, and I can't remember who it is, but it's a major college team. You've probably seen it, I'm sure.
It's Clemson.
I thought it might have been Clemson, but I wasn't sure. But you've got three guys in a shot. You've got the hitter in the box, the hitter on deck, and the hitter in the hole that are all basically getting their timing down on the pitcher. And, of course, you don't have to do it just when you're one of those guys. But usually the comment that goes with that is kind of like you said, what are you doing before you get in the box to get some timing, to try to get timing off this particular pitcher? And, those things can make a ton of difference.
Yeah, it's funny because even we have group chats that go on with the different units of our program, and one of our assistant coaches just put in a short clip the other day from the KBO in one of those early morning games, and same thing. It was just one hitter in the on deck circle, but he's right on time with the guy in the box, and it just again just trying to reinforce those things to our own hitters.
And just sometimes even the more reps you take there, that can affect your confidence. And anytime, no matter what's happening, whether your mechanics are great or they feel terrible, a lot of times just taking a confident approach in the box is going to be the difference between having a quality at bat and not. So even if things aren't going well, if you just work on something small like that, sometimes you can find yourself with a little extra confidence when you get up there.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing. And also I think this is the most controllable aspect of hitting is being on time. And obviously pitchers, the old saying is that pitcher's jobs, the pitcher's job is to throw off timing and the hitter's job is to be on time. But, the biggest thing that we talk about is just kind of being in sync with the guy on the mound. And we've talked about this before in my previous podcast, but at our level, I mean, we see everything from low 90s to, low 70s. So we got a lot of different velocities to be ready for and be on time for.
One of the great things about Division III.
That's right.
You can go to a game and you can go to a game and see 90, 92, and you can go to a game and see like 72, 74, and it could be anywhere in between.
That can put you in a slump. Games right there.
Yeah, no kidding. Why is mechanics, like you said, kind of third on your list of things that usually cause a slump, but also things that you're going to try to talk about as a coach with your players?
Yeah, I think at a certain point, not that things can't be worked on and tweaked and things like that, but when I'm talking about at our level, at least by the time guys get to college and probably even later on in high school, a lot of those the mechanics of their swing is are fairly ingrained into their game, and so it really takes, if they're going to make a big swing adjustment, it really takes a full off season to really make that change. And so when we're in the heat of battle, when we're, if I'm going to talk about this particular hypothetical player as a guy that, like, he's had a rough 5 games, but he's a guy that we know we need in our lineup because, he helps us win games, and we know he's a good hitter at the end of the day, we don't have a lot of time to start messing around with where his hands are and where his feet are and all that kind of stuff. So the way that we try to look at it from the mechanics side is we try to let ball flight kind of be our guide. And, each guy in our program kind of has, we kind of have different goals for what their ball flight should look like. We don't want every guy hitting, fly balls, and we don't want every guy hitting, low line drives and ground balls either. We kind of, it's guy by guy, but we're going to use whatever player that we're working with that's in that slump and try to get him consistently hitting the ball at the right trajectory, again, on a consistent basis. And so the way that we do that is, we're going to give him sort of that external cue. And so if it's a guy that maybe from a mechanic side, he's in a slump, his swing is just getting too uphill, he's flying out a lot, he's popping up, striking out some because of, he's just not on plane consistently. We're just gonna start to just change the implement on that guy a little bit and have him take some rounds with a short bat, have him take some rounds with a heavy bat, with an underload bat, and try to have him recreate the ball flight that we're looking for. At the end of the day, it's good general ball flight. If you're in a cage, anything off the back of the screen, anything off the top of the L screen, that's kind of a generality of what we look for, when it comes to ball flight. So we're just going to try to pepper that guy to just recreate that as much as they can. And once they start to do that, it's funny how their body kind of organizes itself to be able to do that on a consistent basis. And sometimes we will couple that with video, and then we can really kind of go back and say, okay, this is what you were doing before, this is what you're doing now. Maybe it's a stride length thing, maybe it is a hand placement thing or something like that. But it's really hard in real time to really break down those mechanics without having something to go back and slow down and really look at and say, hey, this is what we kind of want to focus on going forward. So again, not to beat the camera to death, but the video camera on your cell phones can really do a lot to help you.
So is that primarily why you're taking, not to go back to this point, but is that primarily why you're videoing in the fall and anytime you can, just to have some points of reference for if a guy's not feeling good, you can kind of compare today's swing to last fall's swing, or is that primarily why you're videoing as much as you can?
Yeah, from a hitting side, absolutely. I think it just, again, gives us some pretty good point in time information. And we the one way we use the video a lot is really try to take we try to cut their good at bats and their good swings up so that we can have some of those ready to go if a guy gets in this situation. Like, hey, this is what you look like when you were 3 for your last 3 and all 3 were missiles and everything's going good. This is how quiet you are in the box. This is how you look to be on time. This is what your stance looked like. This is what your load looked like. All that kind of stuff. They can just kind of see it, and then hopefully we have some video of them struggling and kind of compare the two. So I think that's a really good way. A lot of guys, with the way that this generation operates, a lot of them are visual learners, and when you can tell them till you're blue in the face what they look like and what to do, but until they see it with their own eyes, a lot of times they struggle to implement that, into their game.
Go back to the point that you just made a couple minutes ago about you work on ball flight with guys, get them in the cage, and just work on the ball flight that you're looking for, and that can fix a lot of things. Are you doing that off of a tee? You doing it off a front toss? You doing it off of overhand BP? Are you trying to put them in an environment where they're going to see a lot of success? Are you trying to challenge them still with either hard BP or hitting off of a machine? Like, when you're actually doing that, how are you going about doing that in the cage?
Yeah, with the first two, with approach and timing, I think those two are tough to work on without a ball coming towards the hitter. So, if we kind of deem that to be the issue, and we're in the middle of our season, not that we won't let them get loose off the tee and go through their daily routine that way and all that kind of stuff, but the bulk of the work is going to be with a ball moving towards the hitter. So whether that is the machine or a pitcher throwing BP or whatever the case may be, even live at bats, whatever. But if it's a mechanics thing and we really do need to kind of drill down and try to, maybe make a slight adjustment or work on that ball flight some, we'll kind of do it we'll kind of go in that progression where we'll start off the tee, let them try to, get that feeling of what it should feel like without the ball moving, and then we'll progress to front toss, overhand BP, machine, and then eventually live at bat. So, and that progression can move as quick or as slow as it needs to. Obviously, the faster the better. If you're kind of, again, neck deep in games and you gotta get this guy needs to be ready to hit. It's Wednesday and you're playing Friday. He needs to be ready to hit. You might not have a lot of time to nurse that progression, but we definitely want to make sure that, number one, they feel good off the tee first, and if it's a mechanical thing, before we start to move forward from there.
Last thing, Coach Torresani, and then we'll wrap this up. Early on in the podcast, you kind of mentioned just helping the team win. That's kind of the bottom line with this. Outside of working, with somebody in a cage, are there other things that you do as a coach, as a coaching staff, to just help a guy mentally, feel like he's still helping the team win despite the fact he's not getting hits? Because sometimes when a guy's going through a slump, he just needs kind of a pick-me-up. He just needs somebody to kind of, artificially almost inject some confidence in him. So are there other things that you're talking about, other discussions you're having to help guys feel like, hey, man, you're still a part of this. We're winning. You're not hitting. I know you want to contribute, but you're still contributing. Are there certain things that you can kind of point to, or do you try to do certain things like that to again, just to help guys feel like they're still a part of this and they can still feel some sense of pride, like they're still helping their team, as opposed to, a lot of times when guys are in slumps, guys that are the better team guys, they feel like they're letting their teammates down. That's part of the slump, right? You feel like you're not contributing. So are those things that you try to address as well with your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of those things are sort of can be addressed in sort of those informal conversations too, the practice while guys are stretching, just kind of that tap on the rear and sort of those words of encouragement like you kind of described. When it comes to kind of the bigger issue, like when the slumps really start to affect, mood and disposition and sort of personality, that's really when I feel that the kind of the need to step in. And to be honest with you, a lot of times, we don't want to intercede with our players in these situations until they ask for it, because that's when they're going to be the most receptive. And but once that happens, once they come to us and, like you said, and say, Coach, I feel like I'm struggling and all that stuff, hopefully we have a couple ways to tell them how they are helping us. And the biggest thing that we talk to them about at that point is okay, you might feel this way and maybe you are really struggling, and maybe this, maybe we do have a lot of work to do to get you out of it, but if you can take some of the attention off yourself and really just start to pour that into your teammates, we think you're going to kind of feel this sense of relief that might help you break out of it a little bit faster. And so, we describe it as like little things, helping a teammate on his pre-practice responsibility. Maybe it's not that guy's day to get the water jug down to the field, but, he's going to help out and do that. Or it's not his day to sweep the dugout, but he's got the broom and he's sweeping it out, and he's just trying to pour himself, sort of outwardly into his teammates as a way to take that negative focus of his performance off himself. And so that little trick has worked for us numerous times in the past to help guys out of these situations.
I think that's really key, and I think that's something that good coaches can do is still help players to feel like they're doing their job, they're helping the team win, and find things that they can point out or find ways to get guys involved in other ways when the hits just aren't coming. This is Bryan Torresani, everybody. He's the head coach at Arcadia University. We've been talking about slump busting and particularly with hitters on the Real Dirt podcast. This has been awesome. Coach Torresani, I appreciate everything, man. It's been really great info.
Jeff, thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on and look forward to it down the road.